Imagine this. Your thoughts, your beliefs, your feelings. This is your house. But is it your home? Hi, I'm Nelson DeMello, and join me as we try to find our home beyond our borders.
I don't know. I think that's fine.
Yeah, that's a good take.
I really don't know if you're tired of hearing about the Enneagram. If you don't know anything about the Enneagram, I'm going to try to be brief as I can, while offering as much insight, wisdom, discernment that I can. Talking about it, I already feel the pressure of like, bro, not the Enneagram, bro. Like, why are you talking about it? I'm talking about it more because, I don't know, I want to set the record straight. And like, okay, who am I to do that? I get it. But like, I just hear bad takes on both sides of this is like the thing. And then also this is completely demonic and no one should ever touch it and da-da-da. So let's kind of break that down actually. So I don't know how long I'm going to be talking for. I'm going to break it down because I have the responsibility of keeping it bite-sized, right? Like you're not going to listen to a 4-hour lecture. I'm not Mike Winger, you know. Anyways, so let's start with the history, right? Let's answer the question of, is it demonic? The history. Okay, when we get into the history, no one really knows the ancient roots. I'll be honest. So people can say like, oh, it comes from da-da-da-da. Not quite. Modern, and we'll get there. Modern Enneagram has its roots, sure, we'll talk about that. But where those people got their roots from, it's in debate. Like, I don't know. Honestly, and that's part of my critique of their whole occultic, esoteric thing is if that's their brand, if that's what they need to look like, then yeah, they're going to say that, you know, some spirit came to them and spoke and they just wrote it down, or they were doing automatic writing, or they were tripping on some hallucinogenics and Metatron would, you know, told him everything. Like, of course that's going to be on brand for what they do. They could be, and this is like where the skeptic of me comes in, and like I treated Christianity with this kind of skepticism, and it's why I would say I'm this knowledgeable, is like, I just don't believe things at face value, and they could be charlatans, right? At the end of the day. And with that, a broken clock is right twice a day, you know? So, but let's back up the history. Sorry, I got into it, but I feel like that's important to say. But so before we get into the history, sorry, like history is supposed to be the basic thing, and I'm over here explaining everything except for the history. I want to talk about two concepts. One is common grace, and the other one is convergent cultural evolution. Convergent cultural evolution. Sorry, I'm going to start there though. It's this idea, right, that different cultures, different people groups, they evolve, right, to meet their needs in the same ways that other cultures do, and they didn't necessarily have to communicate with each other, right? So this isn't like oh, this is a cell phone and I'm going to use this cell phone to make a different cell phone with different things, or whatever the case is. I'm talking about written, spoken language, even fire, housing, irrigation, like all of these things happened, you know, before telephones, before people knew about each other. So like, for example, how does the Western world, ancient Western world, right? Like all the natives there and stuff like that. Well, okay, I guess that's in debate of like, oh, China got there first. I don't know. But my point is, okay, let's say China and like the Germanic tribes and like Vikings, or, you know, whatever the case is. How did they kind of come up with the same systems of farming, making tools, like housing, you know, all of this stuff? How did they come up with that stuff? Without communicating, or this idea that like, yeah, that needs are being met by intuition, by some idea that comes into their brains, and they all find the same solutions. That's really what I'm trying to get to, is we all have the same problems. If we were left alone on an island, if we all had our own island, 99, we would have 99% similarities between the solutions that we have. Like, Yes, Japanese houses, ancient buildings or whatever the case is, have the little edges, and that's like a very Asian thing, right? East Asian thing, having the bowing and spike like roofs, where buildings in the Western world are just blocks, right? So there are differences in the aesthetics or whatever, but in functionality, it serves the same purpose. And that's kind of what I'm getting at too with that. I also wanted to bring up common grace. If you don't know what that is, it's just this idea that God shows himself and allows his qualities to be manifested, even if people don't believe in him. Mafia people can love and can be happy, and porn stars can be happy, and all these things. They can feel joy, they can feel love, they can feel peace, and all these things. That doesn't mean that they're living in the right way, they're not, whatever. It's just how gracious God is, that he allows for all people to experience him in some way. And this kind of goes into like how a lot of religions, well, all religions have kind of the same ideas and this and that, is because Romans 1 tells us that his invisible qualities have been made known to all, right? And so people can kind of get a truth, can get a part of the whole truth by just contemplating, by just living life. Like it happens, right? We can't say that without God, they're completely deprived of every single thing that God is. That's just not true. And that's bad theology. That's bad philosophy. That's bad, like you just look outside. Atheists have good lives, and it's just wrong, right? And this kind of goes into Jonathan Edwards' quote about how earth is the closest thing to hell that a Christian will ever live in, right? Because this is imperfect. We're all broken and this and that. And we have a hope that things are going to be redeemed and reconciled and perfect in the afterlife. And then for the unbeliever, this is the closest thing to heaven, where they do experience love, they do experience peace and joy, and they do see the wonder of creation, where in hell, they might not see any of that at all, because that is in essence part of who God is. So without God at all, without his presence being there at all, there, whatever a soul without existing looks like, I'm okay, you get it, right? And so we're in this in-between place where things are kind of confusing in that, like, if we follow that trend. Why is all of that important? Because the ancient roots of the Enneagram come down to different religions, to be honest. And it depends on, I don't know, how you make the connection. But Sufism, right, which is a sect of Islam, where it's like more mystical. And I don't want to compare it to Buddhism in the sense that like, oh, they're kind of the same or whatever. But it's just this idea of like it's spiritual wellness, it's transformation, it's enlightenment. That's the sect of Islam that Sufism kind of focuses on, right? And then you have Greek philosophies like Gnosticism. You have Pythagoreanism, where you get shapes and all this, and how, yeah, like most of us think of shapes and we're just like, yeah, whatever. But like to certain Greek philosophers, shapes mean things. Triangles being perfect, they represent things, right? Forms of life and da-da-da. And then surprisingly for some, you might not know this, there's actually maybe Christian roots. And where that comes in is these desert fathers, they call them, Catholic monks that contemplated on the idea that the 7 deadly sins can be attributed to maybe 7 personalities, I'm not sure, but in the sense that like we all have this core sin that we struggle with, and our personality kind of is rooted in that, and it grows and tries to wrestle with that sin, and that becomes your personality or something of the sort. And so this is the ancient roots. This is like pre-modern Enneagram ideas, right? Wait, hold up. If at any point in this you said, hey, I never thought about it like that, please subscribe. What are you doing, man? I'm trying to pay my bills. Okay, anyways, let's get back to the serious stuff. All right, see it. And then you do get the occult, esoteric, spiritual wave, pseudo new age, not quite new age yet. And 3 people, forgot their names. I guess it don't matter. But yeah, where they say like, oh yeah, I was on psychedelics and Metatron spoke to me and this and that. And I mentioned it before, and that's kind of where we get like, oh, it's demonic. It came from a bad place and this and that. And I guess really, I just kind of want to get to a certain understanding. Okay, so this is the history, right? And we're here. Like, modern Enneagram has a few people that, so this is like early 1900s. You have people that are very esoteric, but I also think that that's kind of like the this or that of the 1900s, right? Like, you're either like science, facts, whatever, or you're like mystical and there's like an allure to your personality or whatever the case is, right? And so I don't think there's this in between that we kind of have now of like psychology and soul care and all that stuff. Regardless, doesn't matter. I guess there's a few things to bring up, right? And I would say, first of all, is like, if you're gonna hold on to that belief that it is demonic, right? Demonic because of its roots and origins. Well, then, is there a consistency there, right? Here, I'm sorry, I have a list of things that psychology uses. Well, I don't know. I mean, like, there's a difference between worldly and demonic, right? Everything that's demonic is absolutely worldly, but not everything that's worldly is demonic, right? And I understand that what makes this demonic is that these people that made the Enneagram, like, brought it to flesh, brought it to fruition, came from those backgrounds, New Age background, and all that. But here's the deal: the third guy was a psychologist, and he whitewashed it essentially, and so that's kind of where, like, we rest in terms of the Enneagram. When we look at other practices that psychology kind of bastardized and whitewashed, we get in that same kind of place. What has been bastardized? I would say breathing techniques, right? Breath work. So I don't know the Buddhist background of breathing and this and that, but I know that if you're feeling anxious and you take slow, deep breaths, that can, like, reduce, I don't want to say reduce your anxiety or whatever the case is, but it can manage it. I use there's breathing techniques to get you aggravated, to get you. I don't want to say like, oh, I learned this on my own. I mean, I kind of did, but I don't know necessarily what even brought it to be. I think I just understood that our emotions causes physiological changes, and one of those things is breath. And in our breath, I think it kind of perpetuates the emotion. So, like, when we get angry, our breaths become more intense and shorter at the same time. So something like that, and me just doing that makes me feel more intense, and that's a breathing technique I do before I do a lift. Any kind of heavy lifting, I kind of just breathe adrenaline into myself and I go do it. Now, is someone who's, Buddhist or wherever it came from, would they look at me and be like, you're inviting, malice into your soul or whatever by doing that? I don't know. And we'll get into, but then that's the thing, right? It's like gratitude, something maybe explicitly to Christianity. I'm not entirely sure. That would sound kind of ridiculous, now that I say it out loud, but it's attributed to Christianity. But gratitude, being thankful for your life, to whatever, right? It doesn't even have to be a power, psychologically speaking, but being grateful, like, makes you happier, right? So that meditation, right? We often attribute that to Buddhism, but again, meditation on the word, and what does that look like? Homeboy, oh my goodness, Judah Smith, he does this thing, and I actually really like this idea, and I think it works for people who don't love reading the Bible. You grab a verse, and you just meditate on it, and you just think about it, and you just think of its implications. You think about what it means to you and how it can heal your soul and all of these things. So, for God so loved the world. What's the world? Those are my neighbors. Those are my enemies. So that's me, right? He so loved me. Oh my gosh. He loves beyond what I can comprehend of love. And so you just go on this journey of meditation, of trying to just think about the same thing, allowing it to go deeper and deeper into your soul, and allowing your spirit to be louder and louder about this truth, right? This is meditating on the word. This is what it looks like. Buddhist origins. You know what I mean? And so, but now it's like mindfulness, meditation, these psychological tricks are whitewashed. It has nothing to do with that. It's just about mental health. And it goes on. Shadow work, inner child work. Yeah, laws of attraction, which looks like prayer, which is, you pray about certain things enough. Manifestation is like a bastardization of the law of prayer. So it's prayer. God, prayer is like the thing, right? It's where your heart becomes transformed, and you start understanding like God's will, and you start also seeing the opportunities that God is giving you, literally, right? And then that turns into manifestation of you erase the God part, and you just bring in like the self-awareness and the universe trying to align with you and whatever. And then that goes into laws of attraction, which literally is just, if you think about something long enough, you're going to start seeing it. So if you think about like job opportunities and you're just thinking about that, your mind's going to start expanding and trying to figure that out. And then you're going to have more job opportunities, and you're going to, whatever the case is. And that's all it is. So it's like, again, this whitewashing of spiritual practices. So if the Enneagram is just that, right? Postmodern Enneagram. Right now, if you look at the Enneagram, I don't know if there's an ounce of spirituality to it anymore. There could be. I'm sure there's blogs and stuff. I'm sure there's groups that you can find and stuff like that do go there. But also, I don't know, like I start reading a blog about some kind of Enneagram, and I'm like, this is cheesy or like pseudo whatever, and I'm like, I need the psychology stuff. I need like tool. This needs to be a tool for me, not a way of living. And we'll get there. But yeah, it's just it's a fickle way of living life. It has no base on anything, no foundation. There's no meat to it. It's literally just a tool. I would say the difference of like digging with your hands and digging with a shovel. You got to dig anyways. The digging is going to happen. Do you just want to make it a little easier on yourself? You want to be more efficient, or you could just dig with your hands. Like either way is fine. I prefer being efficient. So, that's kind of my approach on that. And so, yeah, again, the modern roots, right? These two people, three maybe, that were occult-ish, or maybe they were, and esoteric. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe they're charlatans. If they're not charlatans, then a broken clock is right twice a day. And going back to that idea of common grace, like they were revealed things that ultimately could be helpful for us, but can be distorted to not be, which is literally everything else in this world. So, I think of the internet or money, where like very beneficial. ChatGPT, amazing, right? Can also like steal you away, right? And I even looked up like what does demonic even mean? Like what categories need to be satisfied for it to be demonic? And it was things like taking you away from God, stealing, like enslaving you, and this and that. I'm like, bro, TikTok is demonic then, there's just so much. Movies, TVs, like things that can change your mind about, your faith and this and that, like all of these things. It is as much as you allow it to be, which goes into discernment. So yes. Oh, here it is. Yeah. Is it demonic? Is there a deception? Does it enslave? And does it invite spirits? And it's very possible. And again, like I was saying, anything worldly can be demonic, but everything demonic is absolutely worldly, right? There's nothing demonic that's holy or anything, but worldly is this neutral, broken, post Adam and Eve place that it depends, right? A gun, oh man, I don't know if that's a good example, but like a gun is a useful tool to protect. It's also a harmful tool to kill and murder, right? Which I'm sure that that's just maybe a bad argument, because to protect you might have to, right? Anyways, like a pencil, you can use it to write or stab people. You know what I mean? Like that's probably a better example. So the discernment. Okay, what do we do with that information? So it's maybe demonic, maybe not demonic. What do I do with that? Well, I think these are things that we need to consider, right? 3 things. Okay, first thing, 1 Corinthians 6 and 10, right? All things are lawful, not all things are beneficial. All things are lawful, but I will not be dominated by anything. All things are lawful, but not all things build me up. So we have to question ourselves and our motives and what we are trying to get out of this. Is it beneficial? Okay. This is a tough question because when I thought it was beneficial, it also, there was a season where that made me a jerk and put everyone in boxes. And I was like, that's just, hey buddy, this is just what you're doing. Like, calm down, and it didn't allow for compassion. It didn't allow for connection and connectivity. And so, I thought it was beneficial. It maybe was on my journey and my path to being beneficial, but there were moments where it wasn't. And you got to check yourself on that, right? But there's also that idea of, will this dominate me? Will I let this will this define me? Will this refine me? That's not the goal of the Enneagram, and we'll get into it. But we have to be aware of influence in general, right? We have to be aware of what's dominating, what could dominate us, and what really benefits us in a way that God can look at it and say, yeah, this is benefiting you. Not in a selfish way of it benefiting you, but holistically and truly benefiting you, right? Not in the way if you're lactose intolerant and you're like, oh, ice cream benefits me because I like it, and holistically it does not benefit you, right? You're just gonna have a hard time. That's not fair to yourself in real time, in real life, and then will it build you up? So discernment. My automatic answer, if you had to tell me, yes, I think that it can build up. I think it's beneficial, and I don't think that it can dominate you. But I know that it would be foolish of me to say that that's 100% the case, that it will never dominate anyone, that it won't tear people down, and that it won't benefit anyone, right? So the second thing is, what is your history with occult things? I think this is an interesting idea of discernment. I have heard more often than not from people that come from witchcraft, occult practices, esoteric, whatever, new ageism, whatever, that this is demonic and don't do it. My thing to that, though, is that they have a weakness towards that. They have allowed that to be a weakness. I don't know if it's a genetic thing, because my example here is alcoholics with alcoholism. So we know that alcoholism is a genetic proclivity. You can't escape that. But your history with alcoholism, though, dictates, if you're free from it now, it dictates your relationship with that thing, right? I know alcoholics that can't even use mouthwash because they say it's non-alcoholic, but there's like such a tiny smidge of alcohol in there that they're like, I can taste it. And like this does something in me where maybe I'm thinking about it, going back and like almost like almost a relapse kind of deal. And it's just not for them. They steer clear. They are completely like, there is a freaking what do you call it? Like just a divide and a space between them and alcohol, and they always have to do that. They can't go in bars. They can't go to old places that they used to hang out where they used to drink. Any of that. They are very strict on that, and I think the same thing applies to things that are possibly demonic, let's say, or if used. Yeah, I don't know. Just, I think if you mess with Ouija boards and all these things in a past life, that sounds weird. No, like before being saved, then yeah, you shouldn't even play around with this stuff. That doesn't necessarily mean like the alcoholism, like, I don't know, internet. Like, I have child block on my phone. I can't use Twitter. I can't, do all these things. I don't use social media. Surprisingly, I know I'm all over the place doing things all the time, but it's just not for me. Like, I know that my limits. And so this is where discernment comes in. Is I'm not saying that Twitter is bad, and I'm not saying that people who use Twitter are unholy or bad or in any way like wrong for it. I just know what I can and can't do, and that's one of those things. So in the same way, I invite that kind of discernment and wisdom in saying the Enneagram is not for me because of my background, but it can be a useful tool for anyone who doesn't have those I don't know, soul weaknesses. I don't know what to call it necessarily, but these like these soft spots for temptation, I guess. I don't know. Like in Portuguese, we would call them brechas, like holes, like cracks in the wall, or an open door, like a jar. It's just like these weaknesses, these spaces that things are allowed in. So yeah. Also I think about like backdoor witchcraft. Okay. I'm using the Enneagram in complete ignorance. Not in the ignorance of its background, in the ignorance of what I'm allowing for, right? And I think the blood of Jesus covers that. So even if ultimately, dude, you shouldn't have been, like, if I die and Jesus says, hey, you shouldn't have been doing that, but I've had your back ever since. I'd be like, oh, okay, my bad, whoops, right? And that's like, what are you talking? Like, that's such a thing. Like, that's such a nonchalant way to live, and like, I don't know, very irreverent and da da da. But it's like, to me, it's the equivalent of eating food that was prepared for idols. It's like, I don't have that sensitivity to the food of idols. I just eat it, and there's no, what do you call it? No guilt there. There's no fear. There's nothing there. Same with like Halloween candy. I know, some Christians are like terrified of Halloween candy and da da da. Like my mom would feel guilty that I wouldn't eat any, so she would pray over the candy, right? Make sure that I didn't get any kind of curses or whatever the case is. But again, like, I think God protects us from our ignorance. I got the blood of Jesus covered. It's not like I'm intentionally going after Ouija boards or whatever. That would be it. Yeah, I think there's a difference between intentionally opening that door for allowing demonic influence to come into your life, right? Through seances, Ouija boards. I don't know necessarily. I'm that ignorant that I don't know more than that. But this thing that you're just allowing, intentionally inviting it in, as opposed to doing something out of ignorance, not knowing the repercussions, and thinking that that's going to mess you up. I think God takes care of his children a little better than that, in the same way that we can, that we have to invite him in intentionally on purpose. I think when he's in our home, it takes the same amount of intentionality to get him out and to bring something else in. I don't think that we can be accidentally, possessed. I mean, look, spiritual world is a question mark for everybody, and people who say they got the answers, and yeah. But I would have to assume that it has to be something like that, where it has to be intentional. So, is it demonic? Possibly have had some, occult, esoteric roots. Is it whitewashed now? Yeah. Is it just a psychological tool? I would say so. But again, your proclivities, your weaknesses, all of these things is how you have to discern whether this will build you up, whether it's beneficial, and whether you won't be dominated by it. So that's that on that question. Next. Hey guys, thank you so much for going on this journey with me. If you like the content, please like, subscribe, follow, and remember, there is more to life, and that is good news. Thank you guys so much. Have a great day.